What's up, YouTube? Welcome to Disc Golf Nerd Plastic Podcast, episode 5. And I figured if I was going to continue with this little podcast, which I think I will, I'm kind of enjoying it. I wanted to maybe get back to some of my roots here on YouTube and get back to trying to help kind of spread knowledge for beginners, amateur type players, and just kind of talk strategy, more the mental side of things. I've said for years that you know, I'm not going to go out in the field and show you guys how to throw stuff because you shouldn't be learning how to throw from me. I'm still always learning how to throw. I'm not a high level distance thrower or anything like that. I have a good understanding of how the game works, and I try to share that with people the best I can. But why would you want to see me throw a disc when you can go watch Paul McBeth throw a disc? That just doesn't make any sense. So I kind of found my own niche here and want to be kind of more information based in terms of the way I try to help out disc golfers, and hopefully I've made somewhat of an impact. I've had a lot of positive feedback from folks telling me that I helped them out. It means the world to me. So all that stuff is good, but that's kind of the mission here from the beginning. And I figured this podcast would be a great way to kind of get back into doing that. And I have some things I would want to talk about, advice type things that aren't really video based. It's not really something that I would be able to show you guys anything on, really. Um, I could just talk to you and give you all the same information. So this little podcast is a perfect forum for that. And let's get into it. Some beginner, kind of recreational, amateur type player advice. Um, One thing I'm going to throw in real quick, which I think I am going to break out into its own video, is that the most common mistake I see out there on the course is people throwing discs that they are just not ready for. Um, you shouldn't be throwing drivers, and you shouldn't be throwing high speed, stable, overstable distance drivers for at least a little while of playing. It causes all kinds of problems. You can't throw it straight. Everything you throw wants to go up high and drop out to the left. Then, in order to get distance out of it, you got to throw it on a strong anhyzer and get it to kind of fight to the right and then come back. You can't really throw a straight shot that way, and it kind of forces you to learn how to throw it in a strange way. Where if you threw a nice stable to understable, kind of neutral flying mid-range or putter, you can learn how to throw the different lines and get your form off on the right foot. So that's a major, major mistake that I see people making on the course for the most often. That's what I see. Even with beginners, you get a beginner set of discs or whatever. You get like a putter, mid-range, and a driver, and honestly, if you are to buy like one of those beginner sets, which Discraft has them, Dynamic Discs offers them. I believe there's Latitude 64 has a beginner set, and Discraft, Innova. So even if you were to buy those, generally those discs are hand picked to kind of suit beginners. Don't even take you can take the driver out with you when you're playing if you want to, but I highly recommend just throwing that mid range and that putter first and learning how to throw those at least for a few rounds before you start getting into the driver. But what happens more commonly is people go to the store, they say, I want to start playing disc golf. My buddies are going to go out and play disc golf. I need to go get a disc. They go to the store and they see the high speed, fast distance driver that supposedly gets you all this distance, and it's that's what you want to throw because you want to throw as far as you can, and then it's really counterintuitive when you don't have the arm to maximize the flight of that disc. That's a huge common mistake that I see. I wanted to touch on briefly in this little video. Another thing that's maybe a little bit more advanced than that for sure in terms of advice for players is just to stick with your own game. I see it. I've seen it with myself where I'll like see somebody throw a line that I don't usually throw, or maybe they throw farther than me, and it makes me want to feel like I need to keep up and I need to throw a big shot too, and I'm going to tense up and really try to rip one, and generally it doesn't work out very well. You have to remember that the main focus is you're playing against a course. You're not playing against the other people on your card. if you beat the course, if you play the course better than everybody else in your card, you win. It's not a personal battle, and I mean, of course, there are those kind of like one-on-one battles, like sudden death playoffs and stuff like that. And I love that. It's great. It's a great aspect of disc golf. But for the most part, if you're out there playing around and you want to win, all you have to do is shoot the best score. That's all it is. If you throw your discs less times than everybody else, you win. So don't worry about what everybody else is doing on your card, and just try to stay in your own game and try to play the course in the best, most confident and consistent way that you know how. Maybe you get to a hole and somebody is teeing off in front of you. They throw a sidearm, and it works out real nice. And maybe they skip it up right next to the basket, parked. And you're like, oh, I usually go with this big hyzer here, but I don't usually get a look at the birdie. I just kind of play it in this nice safe spot with a smooth hyzer over the top, and then I lay up and take my three and move on. But man, he just threw that sidearm and he got there, so maybe I should try that, and you're kind of second guessing your normal game, and a lot of times you'll step up, you'll try that sidearm that's maybe not a strength of your game, and you'll throw it early and hit a tree, or you'll throw it up way too high and get no distance, or something bad will happen. Now you're not even in that nice safe spot that you're comfortable with. You're trying to fight out of another area. Maybe you got to throw another sidearm now to get out of there, and it just snowballs from there, and you get into trouble. And the same thing with distance. If you have somebody on your card that throws farther than you, and you feel like you need to keep up with them, so you're gonna really haul off and try to crush one. And a lot of times, if you try to put too much effort on it, you're really trying to throw 100% power on a shot. You're going to mess up one of the variables that go into making sure that this flies properly. Whether that's your release is going to be early or late, your angle is going to be off, your timing is going to be thrown way off, your tempo. Maybe you're just going to throw a grounder. That happens to me a lot. If I try to throw one and put too much rip on it, sometimes I'll just throw it low, and it'll just won't go anywhere because it'll hit the ground. Where you just be way better off stepping up, throwing your normal smooth 70-80% distance throw on that hole. And if you get, if the person on your card is closer after their drive, doesn't really matter. If you hit your putt or if you put your upshot right next to the basket, it doesn't really make any difference, especially on longer holes. Say you're playing a par 4 and nobody's reaching the basket in one. If your car, somebody you're playing with is another 50, 75 feet down the fairway than you, if you throw your accurate upshot and get it up towards the pin, it doesn't make any difference that he threw farther than you. Maybe their upshot was a little bit closer and a little bit easier than yours, but as long as you're accurate and confident with that upshot, you put it up next to the basket, and that extra distance really didn't make any difference at all. It only really comes into play if there's maybe an outside chance that if you threw it with everything you had, you might be able to get there. In that case, you got to weigh the options, and maybe it's worth going for it. Another aspect of, staying with your own game is that you don't always have to do that. That's for when you really care about your score. If you're playing a league, you're playing a tournament, loser has to buy beer after the round or whatever, whatever you set up that makes you care about the score of that round. That's when you want to stay with your comfort zone and throw the shot that works for you, throw the shot you're confident in, and stick with the high percentage shots that you can throw consistently and accurately most of the time. That's what you want to do. But there are plenty of times out there, especially if you're by yourself, you're just throwing a casual round with buddies, go for that wacky shot that you wouldn't normally throw. Try the sidearm, try a thumber over the top. See if maybe you could sneak a forehand roller down there. Maybe you'll find your new go-to shot that will become what you do in those pressure situations where you actually care about your score. For me, a big thing that I do that I think can help out a lot of players, especially considering that I run the Disc Golf Nerd channel here, I almost always have some type of test disc that I'm throwing at the time, to review. So what I'll do is, if I'm playing around with buddies or whatever, but I'm keeping score, which I usually do, I almost always, keep score to some degree, I'll throw my first drive, and that's the one that I will play out the hole with and keep score of. And then I'll throw another drive. Maybe I'll try a different line with a different, or just a different disc, or a different shot shape. Like a different, an anhyzer instead of a hyzer, or a straight shot instead of a hyzer, or whatever it is. It's a great way to kind of learn different lines that you might take without necessarily impacting the score that you're keeping. And, obviously that's not legit for like a tournament round, of course. You can't be throwing extra shots. But out there with your buddies, you're still keeping score. You still know who won, but you get to throw some extra shots and work on a few things out there on the course, which is always beneficial when you can do that. So stick with your own game when it counts. If you're keeping the score, if it's a tournament, pressure situation where you want to win, you want to shoot as the best you can, don't fluctuate heavily from the shots that you usually throw. Stick with what works, what you're confident in, and go with the high percentage, low risk shots, and generally you will score better that way. But again, as I said, if you're playing a casual round, especially if you're by yourself, you're not keeping score, you're just kind of messing around, don't be afraid to try those different lines and see what happens. Maybe you'll find a new line that works for you, or you'll just learn something about one of your discs, and all that information, if you're able to retain it, is beneficial going forward. Something I notice with myself is that even when I play around and I make a major mistake, all you can do is learn from it, and a lot of times it becomes beneficial down the line. You remember that time you went for that shot that didn't make a lot of sense, and how bad you paid for it, or you found that really impenetrable area in the woods that you really don't want to be in, and the next time you get to that hole, you alter your shot and really make sure you don't end up anywhere near that spot again. Which takes me to my other piece of advice here for players is don't be a hero. Now, this is a piece of advice I use a lot in life. A lot of times I'm trying to be kind of goofy with it. I'm not advocating that no one does anything heroic. I'm saying don't overreach and do something stupid because you're trying to, be a hero in the moment there when it doesn't matter, where you really don't need to do it. I see it a lot with, long putts and stuff with amateur players. They'll still try to throw it into the basket, and the idea to just lay it up and move on, regardless of where they are in that hole, is kind of difficult for beginner type players, recreational players to do. They feel like they should always be trying to make it in the basket, and a lot of times their score suffers heavily based on that. You try to run something that you really shouldn't. You should just scoot it up next to the basket and move on. Just lay it up and move on. So yeah, don't be a hero. Don't go for things that are, really low percentage. Like if you end up in the rough and say you're in the woods. I play a decent amount of wooded courses. I love the woods. Say you end up in a really bad area in the woods. A lot of times there might be one like tiny gap that if you throw something just right, you might be able to punch through that gap and get up near the basket or get back out into the fairway, but also progress closer to the basket and, kind of move on down the line. Something that you need to learn, especially, again, for beginners, sometimes you need to throw parallel to your lie or even backwards to get yourself into a better position to be able to proceed from there. Most of the time, if you're in the woods, you try to throw a shot through that tiny gap that's really low percentage, really high risk. It's not going to make it through. You're going to take another kick deeper into the woods, or it's just going to hit something straight out of your hand and not go anywhere, and you're left with the exact same position. Where sometimes you just got to turn 90 degrees, take your putter, and just pitch it out 10, 15 feet out into the fairway, and then you got a nice open shot from there. Or maybe you have to turn around and throw it a little bit behind you to get back out into the fairway. That's what you got to do. Don't be a hero. Don't try to throw that really high risk, low percentage shot through a whole bunch of trees, a whole bunch of limbs, where you could get yourself into even worse trouble and just keep multiplying that score more and more and really have a blow up hole and kind of potentially ruin your round. It's difficult to do. I get it. Nobody wants to pitch out into the fairway, but sometimes you got to take your medicine, as they say, and just move on. Make the best decision for that moment, pitch out, and carry on from there. What was I going to say? Something else just popped into my head there, but I kind of lost it. So I think that's about all I have to, for you guys today. I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of advice. So to recap, stay away from high-speed, overstable drivers and distance drivers when you're just starting out. If you throw it and it hooks hard left, that means you're pretty much not ready to throw it unless it's a disc that's designed and intended to do that for all players. If you're talking about something like a Firebird or a Felon or a Stiletto or a Vibram Notch or something else really overstable, that's what it's for. So that's okay. If you throw it and it hooks left, that's what it's for. If you want to carry it in those situations where you really need to hook hard left or you want to throw a skip shot, that's great. If you get a distance driver that's supposed to just be a straight line distance driver and you throw it and it dumps out left every time, that means that your arm speed is not ready for that disc. So throw something slower, throw something more understable, something straighter like a mid-range, maybe a fairway driver. And if you're just starting out, I always recommend starting with a putter. Throw your first round with nothing but a putter. Believe me, trust me, it will definitely help you learn how to throw, a basic golf shot in the best way. So don't throw the wrong discs. Stay away from stuff that's too high speed and that you're not ready for with your arm. Also, stick with your own game. Don't let internal pressure from yourself, really, because it's not like the people on your card are pressuring you to try to match them with their sidearm or their really long drive or their long putt that they went for, even though it was a risky situation. It's really you that, it's an internal battle where you put that pressure on yourself to try to match that, and that's where you end up getting into the trouble. So don't fall into that trap. Stick with what works for you. If you're out in an open field, throw the shot that you're the most confident in, that you know how to throw it, and that you feel really comfortable lining up that shot. That's what you want to go with, regardless of what anybody else is doing out there. Block them out, play the course, and stick to your game. But if you're out there playing and it doesn't matter, you're having fun, try some different things. See if you can learn a different shot that you didn't quite know. And, try some different things with different discs that you might not have tried normally. And hopefully you can learn something and maybe find a new go-to shot that you can, cultivate from there when it counts. Also, don't be a hero. Don't go for things that are low percentage, high-risk shots. Don't go for long putts, especially if there's water or trouble behind the basket or, a cliff or anything like that. Play smart. Just sometimes you just got to lay it up and move on. And again, if you get into some serious trouble, sometimes the best thing you can do is just pitch out into the fairway, take your medicine, and move on from there. Don't be a hero. Don't try to punch it through that tiny gap that you have a very small chance of succeeding at. It's not worth the risk. A lot of times you will add way more strokes than you will save by going for that risky shot through the woods when you can just pitch back out into the fairway and move on to the next hole. So thanks very much for not watching. I keep trying to say that, but thanks very much for listening. I'll talk to you guys later. All right, cheers.